They branded me a failure after a decade of salvaging their crumbling empire. My wife Elise sat stone-faced as her sister Vanessa fired me in front of the board, sneering as if I were dirt beneath her heels. They didn't just toss me aside. They gloated, parading their betrayal to the world, mocking me before clients and staff. But what they didn't know was a buried contract, one they'd forgotten held my name as the key to their entire operation, with secrets dark enough to topple their house of lies. Have you ever been stabbed in the back by those you trusted most? Drop your stories below, because this one's a wildfire. My name is Ethan Caldwell, 39 years old, and this is how my family's betrayal became the spark that burned their empire to ash and rebuilt it on my terms. Ethan stepped into the sleek glass-walled boardroom of Sterling & Shade, a leather folder tucked under his arm, his mind sharp with expansion. Plans he'd burn midnight oil to perfect, but the air was wrong, thick-heavy, like a storm about to break. Elise sat at the polished mahogany table, her arms crossed so tightly her knuckles gleamed white, her face a mask, eyes locked on the wood, as if Ethan didn't exist. Vanessa lounged beside her, a venomous smirk curling her lips, her posture screaming victory in a game Ethan hadn't even known he was playing. He paused, papers untouched, waiting for a signal. Vanessa's voice cut the silence like a blade. "Ethan," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "You're done. We don't carry dead weight." The word dead weight slammed into him, a gut punch that stole his breath. His jaw clenched, but he looked to Elise, searching for a flicker of defense. Nothing. Her fingers tapped the table, a nervous tick, but her silence screamed louder than Vanessa's insult. Worse, Vanessa leaned forward, her smile widening. "We've already moved the company's assets offshore. Your name's been wiped clean." The board members shifted uncomfortably, but none spoke. Ethan's chest tightened, rage coiling like a snake, yet he forced a calm nod. "Good luck," he said, voice steady as steel, and walked out, the echo of his steps the only sound in the room's cold void. Ethan's hands trembled as he drove home, the leather steering wheel slick with sweat, his knuckles bone white. The word dead weight echoed in his skull. Vanessa's smirk burned into his vision, and Elise's silence, her cold, deliberate silence, cut deeper than any blade. 10 years of pouring his soul into Sterling & Shade, and it had come to this, discarded like a used rag, erased from a legacy he'd bled for. The house loomed ahead, its marble floors and towering ceilings, not a home, but a mausoleum, each step inside amplifying the betrayal's weight. He sank onto the couch, staring at the ceiling, the silence of the empty rooms pressing down like a physical force. How had it come to this? How had the family he'd fought for turned him into a stranger? 10 years ago, Ethan, then 29, married Elise Shade. Sterling & Shade was still under the iron grip of her father. Victor Shade, a titan in the fashion and tech world, who'd built the company from a single boutique into a global empire. Marrying Elise wasn't just love. It was a vow to prove himself worthy of a legacy forged in ambition and polished power plays. Ethan knew the stakes. He wasn't born into wealth. He'd clawed his way up, and Victor saw that hunger. On Ethan's first day, Victor pulled him aside, his hand heavy on Ethan's shoulder. "You're the future of this company, Ethan," he said, voice low but unyielding. "Not because you married my daughter, but because you work like it's your blood in these walls." That moment fueled Ethan through a decade of relentless grind. He rebuilt the supply chain when a key distributor collapsed, flying cross-country to pacify furious vendors, his suitcase, his only companion. He missed his daughter, Lily's fifth birthday, to close the Kessler deal, a high-stakes contract that kept Sterling and Shade afloat during a brutal recession. Late nights blurred into early mornings, spreadsheets and coffee his only constants. "You saved us," Victor told him after Kessler, clapping him on the back. "You're not just family, you're the backbone." Ethan carried those words like a badge proof he belonged in Elise's world. Elise had been his partner then, not just his wife. They'd stay up past midnight, her head bent over his laptop debating strategy, her laughter softening the exhaustion. They were a team, unbreakable, or so he thought. But when Victor retired, the tides shifted. Vanessa, Elise's older sister, slithered into the power vacuum, her ambition sharp as a blade. She'd never hidden her contempt for Ethan, dismissing his deals as dumb luck or Victor's charity. Her words stung, but Elise's slow withdrawal hurt more. Strategy meetings, once filled with their shared ideas, became Vanessa's stage, her voice drowning out Ethan's cautions. Elise, once fierce, grew quiet, her eyes avoiding his, her loyalty fraying like a worn thread. Then came Nora, the company's new lawyer, a viper in tailored suits. Nora wasn't just Vanessa's ally, she was her secret lover, a fact whispered in boardroom corners but never confirmed. Together, they were a storm reshaping Sterling and Shade in their image. Nora's legal maneuvers were ruthless. She doctored financial reports, siphoning company funds into offshore accounts for lavish parties that glittered with excess. One night, Ethan overheard her bragging about a $2 million consulting fee, funneled to a shell company, her laughter cold as she toasted Vanessa with champagne. It was a gut punch, but when he confronted Elise, she brushed it off. "It's just business," she said, her voice hollow, her eyes anywhere but his. Vanessa and Nora's influence grew like a cancer. They sidelined Ethan's vendor contracts, replacing them with shady deals that reeked of kickbacks. When he pushed back, Vanessa sneered, "You're not the only one who works here, Ethan. Step aside for real leadership." Elise said nothing, her silence a heavier blow than Vanessa's venom. Friends noticed the shift, joking over drinks. "You're the unpaid son-in-law now, man." Another chimed in, "They owe you a damn statue." Ethan forced a laugh, but the bitterness lingered, a sour taste he couldn't shake. The worst wasn't Vanessa's power grabs or Nora's corruption, it was Elise's betrayal. In family meetings with Victor gone, Vanessa pushed reckless expansions, ignoring Ethan's warnings about over-leveraging. Elise sat mute, her pen scratching notes, her face a mask. Each silence chipped away at Ethan's faith, but he clung to a fading hope. His decade of results, saving the company building, its name couldn't be erased by politics. That hope died the moment Vanessa called him dead weight, and Elise signed his termination. Her signature, a blade through their marriage, their family, their daughter's future. Ethan sat in the dark, the house's silence deafening his mind, spiraling. Was this Elise's choice, or had Vanessa and Nora broken her? The question burned, but no answer came. His phone buzzed, snapping him from the fog. A text from Caleb, the loyal accountant who'd slogged through countless late nights with him. "They didn't read your contract," it read, simple but sharp. Ethan's pulse quickened, a flicker of something, curiosity, maybe vengeance stirring in his chest. If there was a crack in their armor, he'd find it. And when he did, they'd learn what dead weight could do. Ethan stepped into the Sterling and Shade boardroom, his leather folder heavy with expansion plans, each page a testament to weeks of sleepless nights. The glass walls gleamed like a predator's cage, the air thick with unspoken malice. He scanned the room, expecting the usual nods from board members, but their eyes darted away, fixed on papers or the floor, as if he were already a ghost. Elise sat at the head of the mahogany table, her posture rigid, her face a blank slate, her gaze locked on a single spot, like she was willing herself invisible. Vanessa lounged beside her legs, crossed her smirk sharp enough to draw blood, her fingers tapping a pen like a countdown to his execution. Nora, the company's lawyer, stood at the far end, her tailored suit crisp, her eyes glinting with something darker than ambition, something cruel. Ethan set his folder down, the soft thud swallowed by the room's oppressive silence. He opened his mouth to present, but Vanessa's voice sliced through cold and unyielding. "Ethan, you're done," she said, her tone laced with venom. "We don't carry parasites who leech off our name." The word parasite hit like a sledgehammer, his chest tightening, his breath catching in his throat. He glanced at Elise, pleading for a spark of loyalty, a hint of the woman who'd once fought beside him. But her eyes stayed glued to the table, her fingers twitching, signing his death warrant with a single stroke of her pen. The board members shifted, their discomfort palpable, but none spoke. The silence was a chorus of cowardice. Vanessa leaned forward, her smirk widening into a predator's grin. "We've already scrubbed you from the company," she said, her voice dripping with triumph. 30% of the assets are offshore, untouchable. Your name's nothing but a stain we've wiped clean." Ethan's pulse pounded, rage coiling in his gut. But Nora's next words froze him in place. She stepped forward, her voice smooth as poison. "Oh, and we sold the customer database, millions of American families' personal data, to a competitor for a tidy profit. It's already funding our next phase. You're welcome." The boardroom gasped a ripple of shock, but Vanessa laughed, a sharp, hollow sound that echoed like a slap. Selling personal data, names, addresses, credit card numbers, was a betrayal of trust, a violation so brazen it screamed contempt for the people Sterling and Shade served. Ethan's hands clenched, his nails biting into his palms, but he forced his face into a mask of calm. He looked to Elise again, searching for a crack in her facade. Nothing. She signed the termination order, her pen moving with mechanical precision, her faint smile a blade through their marriage. The room spun, the glass walls closing in like a tomb. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice low, steady, a warning they didn't hear. Vanessa scoffed. "Mistake? You're the mistake, Ethan, a nobody who thought he could play in our world." As he gathered his papers, Nora leaned in her voice, a whisper meant for him alone. "Stay quiet, or your daughter pays the price. Lily's school records are in that database we sold." The threat landed like a fist, raw and personal, twisting the knife of betrayal deeper. Selling data was one thing. Endangering his child was a line no one should cross. Ethan's vision blurred, rage and fear warring in his chest, but he kept his composure, nodding once. "Good luck," he said the words, sharp as glass, and walked out. His footsteps echoed on the polished floor, each one a heartbeat in a room that felt like a grave. The drive home was a haze, the city lights smearing into streaks of color. His hands gripped the wheel, sweat soaking through his shirt, his mind replaying the scene, Vanessa's sneer, Nora's threat, Elise's signature, her betrayal, not just of him, but of their daughter. 10 years of sacrifice, late nights, missed birthdays. Deals that saved the company reduced to nothing. He'd rebuilt Sterling and Shade when it teetered on collapse, negotiated contracts that kept it alive, poured his soul into a legacy he thought was theirs. And now, Elise had sat there complicit as Vanessa and Nora dismantled it, all selling out their customers, threatening his child, erasing his name. The house greeted him with cold silence, its marble floors reflecting his hollow reflection. He dropped his keys on the counter, the clatter jarring in the stillness, and sank onto the couch. The weight of the betrayal pressed down heavy as a coffin lid. How could Elise do this? Was she coerced? Or had she chosen this path, trading their family for power? The questions burned each one a spark in the growing fire of his anger. His phone buzzed a single text from Elise. No apology, just a command. Stay out of this, Ethan. For Lily's sake. The words were a slap-her threat, echoing Nora's confirming her betrayal was no accident, but a choice. Ethan stared at the message, his jaw tight, his chest a furnace of rage. They thought they'd broken him, stripped him bare, left him powerless. But they'd forgotten one thing. He wasn't just a husband or a worker. He was the man who'd built their empire's foundation. And foundations, when ignored, could bring the whole house crashing down. As he sat in the dark, a spark of defiance flickered sharp and dangerous. They'd crossed every line his family, his daughter, the trust of millions. They'd pay not with screams or fists, but with the quiet, devastating precision of a man who knew their secrets. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. Ethan sat in the dark, the house a tomb of betrayal, its marble floors cold as the silence that enveloped him. Elise's text, "Stay out of this, Ethan." For Lily's sake. Burned in his mind, each word a fresh wound proof she'd traded their family for Vanessa's poisoned ambition. The boardroom scene replayed like a nightmare. Vanessa's sneer, Nora's chilling threat to Lily, the gut-wrenching revelation they'd sold millions of Americans' personal data for profit. His hands clenched, nails biting into his palms, the rage a furnace threatening to consume him. But beneath it, a flicker of something sharper stirred curiosity, maybe vengeance a whisper that this wasn't the end. His phone buzzed, slicing through the stillness. A message from Caleb, the accountant who'd stood by him through countless late nights, his loyalty, a rare anchor in Sterling and Shade's treacherous waters. They didn't read your contract. It read simple, but loaded like a match struck in a gas-filled room. Ethan frowned, sitting up, his pulse quickening. His contract. He hadn't thought of it in years. Not since Victor ran the company, when deals were sealed with trust, not deceit. He typed back, fingers trembling. "What's in it?" No reply. The screen glowed, mocking his impatience, but Caleb's words gnawed at him. If there was something they'd overlooked, something buried in those legal pages, it could be a lifeline or a weapon. Ethan stood the couch, creaking under his weight, and moved to his home office, a sanctuary of old files and forgotten victories. The room smelled of dust and ambition, papers yellowed at the edges, some scrawled with Victor's bold handwriting. He tore through folders, his hands steady, despite the storm in his chest, searching for the 2020 merger agreement. That year was a blur of frantic negotiations when Sterling and Shade acquired a tech firm to bolster its digital arm. Victor had trusted Ethan to lead it, clapping him on the back when it closed. "You've locked in our future son." Back then, it was praise. Now, it felt like a ghost calling him to action. Under a stack of quarterly reports, he found it, the Sterling and Shade Tech Subsidiary Agreement, its logo stark against the worn cover. Ethan's breath caught as he opened it, his eyes darting across the legal jargon terms and percentages blurring until page 19. He froze, leaning closer, the words sharpening into focus. Ethan Caldwell, appointed co-chairman of the Sterling and Shade Tech subsidiary, with full authority over all intellectual property patents and proprietary data. He read it again, then a third time, as if the letters might vanish. Signed by Victor, stamped by the company's lawyers, it was ironclad. Every patent, every algorithm, every shred of data that gave Sterling and Shade its edge ran through the subsidiary and through him. But there was more. A buried clause, almost an afterthought. In cases of ethical breaches, including misuse of proprietary data, the co-chairman may initiate legal action to seize control. Ethan's pulse roared in his ears. Selling customer data wasn't just a betrayal. It was a violation of this clause, handing him the power to gut the company legally. A slow smile tugged at his lips. Not the polite mask he'd worn in the boardroom, but something colder, sharper. They thought they'd erased him, but they'd left the keys to their empire in his hands. His phone buzzed again. This time, a call from Harper, the head of design. Her voice hushed, but urgent. "Ethan, I need to talk. It's bad." Harper had always been straight with him, her work ethic a quiet rebellion against Vanessa's politics. They met at a dimly lit diner, the kind where coffee burned and secrets thrived. Harper slid into the booth, her face pale, a USB drive clutched in her hand. "Vanessa forced me to fake product reports," she said, her voice trembling. "They misled investors, inflated stock prices. I kept proof." She slid the drive across the table, her eyes darting to the door. "There's more. Nora's emails. They're planning to sell Sterling and Shade to a Chinese conglomerate." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Sell it," he repeated, his voice low. Harper nodded, her fingers twisting a napkin. "They're finalizing it next month. It'll wipe out Victor's legacy, gut 500 American jobs, ship the tech overseas. They don't care, Ethan. It's all about their payout." The words landed like a bomb, each one a violation of everything Sterling and Shade stood for: American innovation, family, legacy, worker livelihoods. Selling to a foreign entity, especially one tied to data breaches, wasn't just greed. It was a betrayal of national pride, a slap in the face to every employee who'd trusted the Shade name. Ethan took the USB, his jaw tight, his mind racing. The contract gave him control. Harper's evidence gave him ammunition. Together, they could expose Vanessa and Nora's corruption and stop the sale. But Elise, her threat to Lily, her complicity in this treachery, hung over him like a storm cloud. He thanked Harper, her nod a silent pact, and left the diner, the USB burning a hole in his pocket. The city lights blurred as he drove not home, but to a hotel, a temporary fortress where he could plan. They'd crossed every line: his family, his daughter, the trust of millions, the soul of a nation. The spark of vengeance flared brighter no longer, a flicker but a flame. They'd handed him the rope, and he'd weave it into a noose. Ethan sat in the dim hotel room, the city's pulse humming beyond the window, a stark contrast to the stillness of his resolve. The Sterling and Shade Tech subsidiary agreement lay open on the desk, its pages a map to retribution.